Assalamualaikum, my name is Zaimatul Hassana binti Norman. My number matric is PB191100154. Okay, today I'm so excited because I want to present my novel, We Choose Novel Around the World in 80 Days. Okay, so my part is introduction. Alright, so first of all, I want to introduce who's Mr. Phyllis Ford. Mr. Phyllis Ford lived around 1872 at number 7 Savile Road, Presention, the house in which children died in 1814. He was one of the most noticeable members of the Reform Club, though he seemed always to avoid attracting attention and enigmatic personage about whom little was known, except that he was a polished man of the world. People said that he resembled Byron, at least that his head was Byronic, but he was a portrait, tranquil Byron who might live on 1,000 years without growing old. Alright, so was Phyllis Ford rich? Do you want to know? I think yes. Okay, so I want the story about this. Undoubtedly, but those who knew him best could not imagine how he had made his fortune, and Mr. Ford was the last person to whom to apply for the information. He was not lavish, nor, on the contrary, very curious, for whenever he knew that money was needed for a noble, useful, or beneficial purpose, he supplied it quickly and sometimes enormously. He was in short the least communicative of men. He talked very little, and seemed all the more mystery for his taciturn manner. Alright, so, had he traveled? Okay, so it was likely, for no one seemed to know the word more familiarly. There was no spot so circulated that he did not appear to have an intimate acquaintances with it. He often corrected with a few clear words the thousand conjectures advanced by members of the club as to loss and hurt of travelers, pointing out the true probabilities and seeming as if gifted with a sort of second sight. So, often the events justify his predictions. He must have traveled everywhere, at least in the spirit. In Hong Kong, Fitz's confidence in Percival out. Who does not believe him? To stop Percival from informing Ford, Fitz kept also drunk and drugged him, but Percival still managed to catch the steamer to Yokohama, but without Ford. Ford and others managed to reach Yokohama on their own and look for Percival out. They find him in the circus trying to earn a fare for his journey home. The four then sailed to San Francisco, then traveled to New York, and finally to Liverpool, encountering a number of obstacles along the way. Once they are back in Britain, Fitz arrests Ford but soon realizes his mistake when he finds out that the actual bank robber has already been caught. The next day, Ada tells Ford that she loves him and he agrees to marry her. Percival soon discovers that they had mistaken about the date and that they had actually arrived early. Ford immediately goes to his club and arrives in time to win the bet. Ford marry Ada. Last but not least, for introduction, I want to introduce you. The story is set in various locations around the world, from London to India, Hong Kong, China, the United States, and finally back to London. The setting is in the late 19th century. The main theme of the story is about a man who is challenged to accomplish a feat, and he managed to do so. The feat is about being about to travel around the world within 80 days. For is very excited to take up this challenge because he believes that by being precise and efficient enough, one can make this possible. Despite the many obstacles he faces, he does not give up. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nazimah the Summarizer. Next, I'm going to present the summary of the novel Around the World in 80 Days. At the Reform Club, Phyllis Fogg and the club member discuss a recent bank robbery. After that, Fogg declares that it is possible to go around the world in 80 days. He begged for £20,000 when the other club member didn't believe in him. Phyllis Fogg brought Passepartout with him. Before that, he told the servant to pack very simple clothes for both of them. Fogg also told him to take care of a carpet bag which contained his £20,000. Phyllis Fogg and Passepartout experienced several difficulties on their journey. Then, Detective Fix, who in charge of looking for the bank robber, mistaken Fogg for the criminal. He followed Fogg and Passepartout without revealing his real identity as a detective. In India, they save Auda, a Persian Indian princess who is a young widow, from getting burned for a traditional purpose, and let her join their journey. Then they got arrested by a policeman and got a fine. Fogg paid a large amount of money for the bail and they continue their journey. Detective Fogg keeps worried about his plan to catch Fogg. Detective Fix tells Passepartout about his real mission and revealed himself. The servant did not believe Fix and refused to help him. But then he got an unconscious effect of the liquor he had with Fix. Phyllis Fogg cannot find his servant and then continue the journey with Auda and Fix. However, he keeps thinking about Passepartout, who suddenly disappeared. Then they finally arrive in Hong Kong. Passepartout reached Yokohama and meets Fogg and Auda there. Then he joined his master to go to San Francisco. After facing a lot of obstacles, they finally get to Liverpool, but things get worse. They got arrested by Fix. Phyllis Fogg is jailed and running out of time to reach London. Fix then rushes in to meet Fogg and tells that the real robber has been arrested. Fogg then returns to London, but unfortunately he led and lost the bet. Phyllis Fogg confessed his love to Auda and they agreed to get married. Then he realized that they are wrong in counting the days. They are actually 24 hours earlier when they arrive in London. Then Fogg finally reached the Reform Club and won his wager for £20,000. He not only won the bet but also a beautiful and charming wife, Auda, thanks to the idea of a marriage where they start to discuss the actual date of the days. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Amirul Rizwan Abdul Razak. I'm from FPEP. Today I would like to present to you my digital book review on a novel entitled Around the World in 80 Days. So, on this novel, the main character is Felix Fogg, a wealthy, eccentric, solitary English gentleman and lives in Savile Row, London. No close relationship and mystery person. Is a wanted criminal all over the world. The second one, the flat character, which is Detective Fix, one of the greatest detectives in England investigating a robbery case committed by Felix Fogg. Fix tried to help Fogg in exploring 5 countries in 80 days until he forgot he is the detective. The characteristic on Felix Fogg is a wealthy, eccentric, solitary English gentleman who is about 40 years old and lives in Savile Row, London. This pretty and intelligent man is one of the most memorable characters in Verne. When we are introduced to him, he is an Englishman who lives a very regularized life. He is impeccable in his manner and is very punctual, as well as particular about what he wants. If it were not for the title, we would never have guessed that he make a plan to go around the world. What is most distinct about his character is his eccentricity, and even his trip around the world result out of a stubborn quirk and not out of a greed for the wager money. And the second one, Felix Fogg is an efficient and punctual person until he is able to travel to 5 countries in 80 days. With a strange obsession with routine and punctuality and no close relationship, Fogg is a mystery and thus around him and spent all of his time gambling and reading newspaper at the Reform Club social organization. The same day that he hired a new servant, Jean Passepartout, Fogg made an impulsive wager of £2,000 with his fellow whist player that he can travel around the world in 80 days, leaving that night, 21st October, and arriving back on 21st December. He brings Passepartout with him on his journey, and they travel to Egypt, India, China, Japan, and United States, and go back to England in order to traverse all 360 degrees of the globe. And the last one, Philip Fox, is someone who tends to commit offenses such as robbery and drinking alcohol. His wealth, odd habit, and the reckless wager have made him the prime suspect of a recent bank robbery, and he is being travelled across the world by Detective Fox from Scotland Yard. Throughout the trip, Fogg calmly faced and solved myriad obstacles and delays, using with money, and formed close relationship with Passepartout and the other companions he meets and changes along the way, particularly Auda, a young woman they saved from being sacrificed in India, who gradually fall in love with Fox as she jogged along on the adventure. When they finally make it back to England on the last day of the wager, Fix arrests Fogg, a delay that prevents him from winning the bet even after the real bank robber is apprehended and he is released. That's all for me. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Noafa binti RC, metric number BB19110406. I would like to present to you my digital book recommendation on a novel entitled Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. Before I continue with my presentation, I would like to introduce two interesting characters in making the storyline on novel Around the World more interesting. The first character is Phileas Fogg, is the main character. He was a most popular member of the Reform Club because an enigmatical personage. His trackers willingly paid aside from his account current. The side character is Jean Passepartout, the harnessed and ever comical French valet of Mr. Fogg. He is loyal yet inadvertently by some traveling companion. He is a brave, warm man, yet seems to often throw a wrench in Fogg attempt to travel around the world in 80 days. He is very endearing, though utterly comedic. I love to read this novel because the story details his attempt to go around the world in 80 days. Mr. Phileas Fogg is the main individual who travel around the world in 80 days. Totally, this novel is very interesting, so other people need to read. One of the parts that intrigued me, and I still remember after reading this novel, when disembarking in Egypt. He is watched by a Scotland Yard detective Fix, who has been defected from London in search of a bank robber because Phileas Fogg matches the description of the bank robber. Fix mistakenly believes Fogg to be the criminal. The another part interesting is Fogg reached London a full day early. Fogg wins the wager, and in the course of his travel, he finds himself a worthy, charming, and beautiful wife in Aoda. However, the weakness of the story of this novel when Passepartout suspect bad to Phileas Fogg because Fogg is almost the same as the deceased robber. But in fact, Fogg has nothing to do with Fig's case. Fogg has paid the police not to jail Passepartout. Overall, this novel is very interesting for anyone who reads because of the short, easy to understand, and compact storyline. I love this novel because it has action, adventure, and comedy. And this novel I recommend to person who like this genre. The novel is also interesting because it is useful in daily life because it introduces countries and in their culture. In part, Miss Fix mistakenly believed Fogg to be criminal. Fig has detained Fogg for his passport visa investigation and want to arrest Fogg when a warrant has been issued in Bombay. The effect of that Fix arrests Fogg at level 4. Fogg is unable to arrive in London as planned. 9 hours left. From this part, I would like to recommend Mr. Fix should have more closely examined Mr. Fogg's identity and compare it to the desired robber. Fix should have released Fogg as Fix's action would have affected Fogg's time to reach level 4. Furthermore, in this part need to add storyline which is when Fogg was successfully released, a large sum of money has been brought down along with Fogg and Passepartout has been robbed by the real robber, wanted by Mr. Fix. After that, Fogg and Passepartout become captive of robber. So they were taken to when Fogg was successfully released. A large sum of money has been brought down along with Fogg and Passepartout has been robbed by the real robber wanted by Mr. Fix. After that, Fogg and Passepartout were taken prisoner. Then that can add action, fight to make reader angry at the real robber and reader will think what will happen later to Phileas Fogg and Passepartout. The another recommend I would like to suggestion is Phileas Fogg the author need to continue the storyline of how Phileas Fogg used the wager he earned as a result of traveling around the world in 80 days. Writer also need to add the ending of the story with the new life of Phileas Fogg and his wife. Moreover, author also need to add more side character in the storyline to multiply other action. Therefore, reader are not bored with the same character alone. That's all for me. I hope after you see this presentation, you will read the novel Around the World in 80 days. Thank you and have a nice day.
Hello and hi everyone, my name is Divina binti Adwahab from FPEP. Today, I would like to present to you about the character in my digital book review on a novel entitled Around the World in 80 Days. The main character in this novel is Phileas Fogg. Phileas Fogg was a wealthy, eccentric, solitary Englishman about 40 years of age and living in Savile Row, London. With a strange obsession with routine and punctuality and no close ties, Fogg is a mystery to those around him and spends all his time gambling and reading newspaper in the Reform Club social organization. He took passport with him on his journey and did travel to Egypt, India, China, Japan, the United States, and returned to England to cross all 360 degrees of the world. The second character is Jean Passport. Jean Passport, like a member from Phileas Fogg, and is a Parisian man around 30 years old and has a pleasant and relaxed demeanor. Having lived life as an adventurer, singer, circus player, and firefighter, he was eager to settle down and live a quiet life as a Fogg household helper. The colorful past proved useful in their journey, however, as Passport was able to creatively solve different resistant problems. The third character is Detective Fig. Detective Fig is an inspector from the Scotland Yard who suspects Phileas Fogg of robbing the Bank of England. Fig believes that Fogg's wager of travelling around the world in 80 days is a cover-up for his escape from London and decides to follow him and his servant Jean Passport on their adventure. He is continually waiting on an arrest warrant to arrive in each country they pass through, since he can only legally arrest vote on British territory, England, India, Hong Kong, or Yokohama. Fig manipulates passport by pretending to be his friend in an attempt to gain information about Fogg and delay their travels, and eventually converts his true identity and motivation to him. The heroine in this novel is Oda. Oda is a Persian Indian princess who was rescued by Fogg. Shares the adventure of the duo, grateful for the kindness extended to her cares for Fogg and passport, but later comes to love Fogg. He's a young, stinkingly beautiful Indian woman, and the gods saved from being sacrificed at a ceremony. The daughter of wealthy Bombay merchant, Auda is fair-skinned and was raised in an Anglicized part of India, where she attended an English school. After she was orphaned, she was married off to the elderly Raja of Bandakam, and after the Raja died, was sentenced to death by his family. Fogg and his companions happened to see her being led through the jungle by her possessions of Brahmins and decide that they must save her from being sacrificed. For the other character is Sir Francis Cromarty is about 50 years old and Fogg in the last spoil revert in India. He now lives there and rarely visits England. He is very knowledgeable about India and its history, having assimilated to the country's culture. On the steamer, he plays with Fogg to pass the time, and the two become friendly acquaintances, despite the fact that Sir Francis thinks Fogg's adventure is foolish and thus not good for anyone. When the train unexpectedly stops due to an incomplete line, Sir Francis joins Fogg, passport, and their guards as they ride an elephant journey through the jungle. Okay, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.